My dear brother, my dear sister, I want you to settle something in your spirit right now. Nothing that has been planned against you has escaped the attention of God. You may not have heard the conversations. You may not know the names involved. You may not even fully understand why resistance has increased in your life. But heaven has full awareness of what earth has attempted. God says, I have seen it, not some of it, not part of it. Every word spoken in secret, every intention hidden behind a smile, every plan drafted in darkness. God is not reacting late. He is responding on time. The delay you feel is not negligence, it is precision. God often allows plans to fully form, so that when He erases them, there is no doubt that it was His hand alone. There are people who assumed your silence meant ignorance. They thought because you did not confront them, you did not discern them. But God says, I trained you to be still so I could fight. Not every battle requires your voice. Some battles require your restraint. And while you were choosing peace, God was gathering evidence. I want you to hear this clearly. The opposition you are sensing is confirmation that you are positioned correctly. The enemy does not waste strategy on irrelevant lives. The intensity of the attack reveals the value of the assignment. You are not under pressure because you are weak. You are under pressure because you carry something heaven has endorsed. God says tomorrow is not symbolic, it is decisive. Tomorrow represents a divine shift, a moment where what was forming against you will lose its authority. Plans only have power when God allows them to proceed. And tonight God is revoking permission. There is a man, yes, a specific individual, whom God is about to use in a way you did not expect. This man may not even be aware yet of the role he will play. He may think he is acting on his own judgment, his own timing, his own reasoning. But God says, I will guide his steps without announcing my name. What was meant to limit you will instead become the instrument of your release. You must understand that God does not always remove opposition by destruction. Sometimes He removes it by exposure. Sometimes He removes it by redirection. Sometimes He removes it by turning an enemy's confidence into their own confusion. And when God erases a plan, He does not leave traces behind. He removes its memory, its influence, and its momentum. Do not panic because things feel intense right now. Intensity often precedes intervention. The closer the breakthrough, the louder the resistance. But God says you will not have to fight tomorrow's battle with yesterday's fear, what felt heavy. Tonight will feel irrelevant soon. Stay alert, but do not be anxious. Stay prayerful, but do not be afraid. God is not asking you to defend yourself. He is asking you to trust His timing. When God steps in, explanations become unnecessary. And hear this final truth for this moment. When God says He will erase every plan made against you, He is not negotiating. He is declaring, and what God declares no man can reverse. And hear me carefully now, because what I am about to say must settle deep inside your spirit. God does not expose plans early to create fear. He exposes them at the right moment to remove their power. The reason you are sensing clarity instead of panic is because God has already stepped ahead of you. Fear comes when we discover danger alone. Peace comes when we discover danger while standing with God. You must stop blaming yourself for what others secretly plotted. Some of the heaviness you carried was never yours to begin with. It was the residue of other people's intentions brushing against your life. You felt tired without reason. You felt distracted without explanation. You questioned yourself even when you had done nothing wrong. That was not weakness. That was discernment operating without information. God says, I allowed you to feel it so you would not be destroyed by it. Had God revealed everything too early, it would have overwhelmed you. Had He revealed it too late, it could have harmed you. But divine timing always protects both the heart and the destiny. Listen to me like a shepherd speaking to his flock. Not everyone who sits close to you is for you. Not everyone who prays with you prays honestly. Not everyone who celebrates you wants your growth. And yet God has never required you to expose them yourself. He has never asked you to become suspicious, bitter, or aggressive. He has simply asked you to remain aligned. Alignment is your greatest protection. When you walk in alignment, God takes responsibility for your defense. When you walk in obedience, God assumes control of outcomes. That is why he says tomorrow he will erase the plans, not that you will confront them. Your job was never exposure. Your job was endurance. There is something powerful about a believer who keeps walking even while being watched, judged, and strategized against. Heaven pays attention to that kind of faithfulness. Hell grows nervous around that kind of consistency. You kept praying when you could have quit. You kept showing up when you could have withdrawn. You kept loving when you could have hardened your heart. And now God says the season of silent endurance is closing. Tomorrow does not mean a calendar date alone. It represents a shift in authority. It represents a moment when influence changes hands. It represents when God interrupts a process that others thought was permanent. What they assumed would slowly erase you. God says he will suddenly erase instead. That man God mentioned is not random. God often uses unexpected instruments to dismantle intentional harm. Sometimes he uses someone inside the system. Sometimes he uses someone previously neutral. Sometimes he uses someone who was underestimated. But when God uses a man, he does not need that man's full understanding, only his availability. You may never hear the full story of how God intervened. You may never know what conversation was interrupted, what decision was reversed, what instruction was changed. And that is intentional. God protects you not just from harm, but from the burden of knowledge that could weigh down your peace. I need you to release the need to see justice in your own way. Divine justice does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks quiet. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like confusion on the other side while clarity increases on yours. When God erases a plan, he does not leave room for revival of that plan. What was spoken against you will lose its audience. What was decided against you will lose its agreement. What was prepared against you will lose its timing. Plans require alignment, cooperation, and momentum. God says he is dismantling all three at once. Do not go looking for confirmation from people. Do not start asking questions God has already answered. Trust the peace he is giving you now. Peace before evidence is a sign that heaven has already resolved the matter. I want to speak directly to the part of you that feels weary. This battle was never meant to be permanent. This pressure was never meant to define you. You were not meant to live alert forever. God allows seasons of watchfulness, but he also restores seasons of rest. And finally, hear this as a pastoral blessing over your life. You are not late, you are not behind, and you are not forgotten. The very fact that God is speaking now means movement is already in progress. Tomorrow will not require effort from you. It will require trust. Stand still tonight. Let God work without your interference. Let him erase without your assistance. Let him prove that when he says he will use a man, he already has the outcome secured. What is ending is not just a plan, it is a chapter, and what begins next will not carry the residue of this battle. Beloved, there are moments in life when God does not ask for your opinion before he intervenes, not because your voice does not matter, but because the situation has reached a level where divine authority must override human involvement. And this is one of those moments. God says, I am shifting authority without asking you to announce it. Explain it or defend it. What is happening now is not dependent on your understanding. It is dependent on his sovereignty. Many people assume that change only comes after confrontation, explanation, or visible struggle. But God often works in a way that bypasses human drama entirely. He does not always expose what he removes. He does not always explain what he dismantles. Sometimes he simply changes who has the final word. And when authority shifts, outcomes follow naturally. You must understand this clearly. Authority is more powerful than intention. People may intend harm, delay, limitation, or damage, but intention without authority is powerless. What you are witnessing now is not God arguing with opposition. It is God revoking access. When God removes authority, plans collapse on their own. There were voices that spoke confidently about your future as if they owned it. There were assumptions made about where you would end up, how far you would go, and when you would stop progressing. But God says, "They spoke as if they were God, but they forgot I am listening." And now, the same confidence they carried will turn into uncertainty. I want you to hear this as a shepherd speaking gently but firmly. Stop replaying what they said about you. Those words were never prophetic. They were speculative. They were rooted in observation, not revelation. God's word over you does not come from what people see. It comes from what He ordained. There are seasons when God allows others to think they are in control, simply so He can demonstrate that control never belonged to them. Power is most effectively displayed when it is exercised quietly. And God says He is moving quietly right now. This is why you have felt an unusual calm mixed with alertness. You are not confused. You are positioned. God often stabilizes the heart before He shifts the environment. If He changed everything around you first, your heart might not be ready to sustain it. So He prepares you internally before He acts externally. That man God mentioned earlier is not coming to announce himself as a helper. He is not coming to apologize, explain, or seek recognition. He is coming because God will press on his conscience, his judgment, or his responsibility. Sometimes God uses men who do not even pray for you, but are unknowingly responding to His instruction. This is important. Do not idolize the instrument. The man is not the miracle, God is. If you focus too much on the person, you may miss the hand behind the movement. God uses people the way He uses wind, directional, purposeful, and temporary. You may notice doors closing without effort, resistance fading without confrontation, delays resolving without struggle. That is not coincidence. That is authority being reassigned. When God moves, He does not create chaos for His children. He creates clarity. Some of you have been trying to explain yourself to people who were never assigned to understand you. God says, stop translating what I already approved. You do not need validation from those who benefit from your delay. You do not need permission from those who fear your progress. Let me speak pastorally to your spirit. It is okay to rest now. It is okay to stop watching everyone so closely. Hypervigilance is a sign of survival mode, not faith. God did not bring you this far to leave you defending yourself. He brought you this far to show you what happens when He defends you. The enemy thrives on your exhaustion, but God thrives on your trust. And trust is not passive, it is surrendered confidence. It is the decision to say, God, I will not interfere with what you are handling. You are not losing control. You are releasing it. And there is a difference. Loss creates fear. Release creates peace. God says He is not removing your responsibility, only your burden. Tomorrow represents a transfer. What was heavy on you will be lifted off you. What required effort will begin to flow. What demanded explanation will no longer need defense. When God steps in, justification becomes irrelevant. I need you to stop measuring progress by noise. Silence does not mean stagnation. Silence often means systems are being adjusted behind the scenes. Some of the most significant decisions in heaven are made without announcement. Do not rush God by forcing outcomes. Rushing creates Ishmael moments, things that look successful but carry long-term consequences. God's timing creates Isaac moments, promises fulfilled without regret. You are entering a season where discernment will increase, not paranoia. Peace will deepen, not dullness. Confidence will rise, not pride. God is refining your posture so you can steward what comes next. There will be people who notice the shift but cannot explain it. They will sense distance, change, or loss of influence, but they will not know why. That is divine separation. God does not always remove people physically. Sometimes He removes their reach. And hear this clearly, the authority shifting now is permanent. God does not reverse decisions He makes in response to obedience. What He restores, He stabilizes. What He protects, He preserves. You will not have to fight to maintain this new ground. You will simply have to stay aligned. Alignment keeps you under covering. Covering keeps you under peace. So tonight, release control one more time. Lay down the mental rehearsals. Lay down the what-ifs. Lay down the need to see everything clearly. Faith does not require visibility. It requires trust. God has already gone ahead of you. The authority has shifted. The plans are losing strength. And tomorrow will simply reveal what heaven has already decided. Beloved, I want to speak now to the part of you that survived quietly. Not the part that celebrated publicly, but the part that endured privately. The part that kept functioning while feeling empty. The part that kept believing while feeling tired. God says, I saw what the battle took out of you, and I am not ignoring it. Victory is not only about stopping the attack, it is also about restoring the strength that was consumed while resisting it. Some of you won battles that nobody applauded. You showed up when you wanted to disappear. You smiled when your spirit was heavy. You stayed faithful when you felt unseen. And while others only saw your consistency, God saw your cost. He says, I do not allow my children to lose energy without returning it with interest. Restoration is not always loud. Sometimes it begins as relief. Sometimes it begins as clarity. Sometimes it begins as sleep that finally feels peaceful again. God restores in layers because he heals in wisdom. If he returned everything at once, you might not recognize how far he has already brought you. Let me shepherd your heart gently here. Not all exhaustion comes from sin or disobedience. Some exhaustion comes from obedience under pressure. Some weariness comes from standing when it would have been easier to walk away. And God honors that kind of fatigue. He does not shame it. He heals it. You have been in a season where you gave more than you received. You poured out emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and sometimes even physically. And God says, I am changing the flow. You will not always be the one carrying the weight. You will not always be the one initiating the effort. There are seasons where God asks you to build, and seasons where he asks you to receive. The enemy tried to convince you that being tired meant being weak. But tired does not mean defeated. Tired means human. Weakness is giving up. Weariness is needing renewal. And God specializes in renewal. I want you to hear this clearly. God is not restoring you to who you were before the battle. He is restoring you to who you were meant to become because of the battle. Some strength only develops under resistance. Some wisdom only comes through pressure. Some authority only grows when tested. You may notice that you no longer react the way you used to. Things that once triggered you now feel distant. Conversations that once disturbed you now feel irrelevant. That is not emotional numbness. That is maturity. God has refined your responses without hardening your heart. There were moments when you questioned your sensitivity. You wondered if feeling deeply was a disadvantage. But God says, your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your instrument. Sensitivity allows discernment. Discernment allows protection. Protection allows peace. God is restoring your joy, but not the fragile joy that depends on circumstances. He is restoring anchored joy, the kind that remains steady even when situations fluctuate. This joy does not come from everything going right. It comes from knowing God is present even when things are unclear. Some of you lost confidence in your own voice during the battle. You stopped speaking up. You second-guessed your instincts. You questioned your discernment. God says, I'm restoring your trust in what I placed inside you. You will begin to recognize again when something is off. You will begin to feel peace when something is right. Restoration also includes boundaries. God is teaching you how to say no without guilt, how to step back without apology, how to protect your energy without explanation. This is not selfishness. This is stewardship. You cannot pour from a vessel God is refilling. I need you to understand something very important. You are not behind. You are recovering. And recovery is not regression. Athletes do not stop being strong when they rest. They rest so they can remain strong. God has called you into a rhythm, not a race. The battle tried to distort your perception of time. It made you feel late, rushed, pressured. But God works outside of panic. He restores without hurry. He heals without force. He rebuilds without anxiety. There are connections God is restoring, but this time with clarity. There are opportunities God is restoring, but this time with wisdom. There is confidence God is restoring, but this time without pride. What returns will be healthier than what left. You may feel moments of grief for what you lost along the way. That is normal. Loss does not mean the season was wrong. It means it was costly. God does not dismiss your grief. He redeems it. He turns it into depth, compassion, and understanding. I want to speak directly to your inner life. God is restoring your prayer, not as a duty but as a refuge. You will find yourself wanting to be still again, wanting to listen, wanting to sit in His presence without asking for anything. That is intimacy returning. There were nights when you prayed out of desperation. Soon you will pray out of gratitude. There were days when you prayed for survival. Soon you will pray for direction. That shift is already beginning. God is also restoring your vision. Not ambition-driven vision, but purpose-driven vision. You will begin to see beyond the immediate challenge, beyond the recent pain, beyond the last disappointment. God is lifting your eyes without dismissing your past. Let me remind you pastorally, restoration does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means healing enough to move forward without carrying bitterness. God is not asking you to forget. He is asking you to forgive so you can be free. You are learning how to carry peace into environments that once stole it from you. That is growth. That is authority. That is restoration. And hear this as a blessing over you. What God restores will not be taken again in the same way. You have learned too much. You have grown too deep. You are too aware now. The battle drained you, but it did not define you. The season tested you, but it did not finish you. God says, I am restoring your strength, your clarity and your joy, and this time I am anchoring it in me. Take a deep breath. You are not breaking. You are rebuilding. And what is being rebuilt will last. Beloved, as we come to this final part, I want you to understand that God never shifts authority, erases plans, or restores strength without also sealing the outcome. God is not a God of temporary victories. What He completes, He establishes. What He delivers, He protects. And what He seals cannot be casually reopened by the enemy. Many people experience moments of breakthrough, but fail to recognize the importance of closure. God is not only interested in rescuing you from the storm, He is interested in ensuring the storm does not follow you into the next season. That is why this part matters. This is where God places spiritual boundaries around what He has already done. I want to speak to you like a pastor who cares deeply about your future, not just your relief. God is sealing your discernment. You will not go back to ignoring red flags. You will not go back to doubting your inner witness. The season you came through sharpened your hearing, and God is preserving that sensitivity. Some of you feared that peace would make you careless, but God says peace will make you wise. Fear clouds judgment. Peace clarifies it. You are not becoming passive. You are becoming settled, and a settled heart is harder to manipulate than an anxious one. God is also sealing your identity. The battle tried to confuse you about who you are. It tried to reduce you to survival mode. It tried to make you define yourself by opposition instead of purpose. But God says, you are not who the pressure tried to name you. You are who He called you before resistance ever appeared. When God seals something, He does it internally before it shows externally. That is why you may feel a quiet confidence rising. Not arrogance, not urgency, just a steady knowing that you are held, guided, and protected. This confidence does not need validation. It does not demand applause. It simply rests in truth there. Is also a sealing happening around your relationships. God is filtering access. Some people will naturally drift without conflict. Some conversations will stop without explanation. This is not loss. This is alignment. God is preserving what supports your peace and removing what drains it. I need to say this clearly and lovingly. Not everyone who was present in your last season is permitted into your next one. God does not punish people by removing them. He protects you by repositioning them. And when God seals a season, He closes doors gently but firmly. You may notice that certain temptations no longer appeal to you. Certain arguments no longer interest you. Certain environments no longer energize you. That is not boredom. That is growth. God is sealing your appetite. What once fed distraction will no longer satisfy you. This sealing also includes spiritual authority. You will pray with more confidence, speak with more clarity, discern with more accuracy. Not because you are louder, but because you are aligned. Authority does not shout, it stands. The enemy may try to remind you of past failures, past fears, or past wounds. But sealed work does not reopen easily. When God seals, he silences accusations. What he forgives, he forgets. What he heals, he no longer references. I want you to release the fear of, what if it happens again? That question belongs to yesterday. Wisdom remains, but fear is no longer required. God does not train you through trauma, only to abandon you afterward. He trains you so you can walk forward with confidence. Tomorrow, as God said, is not just about erasing plans. It is about establishing peace. It is about confirming protection. It is about showing you that what was hidden has been handled, and what was heavy has been lifted. Let me speak this pastorally over your life. You are allowed to enjoy this season. You are allowed to breathe without guilt. You are allowed to laugh without suspicion. Joy is not negligence. It is trust. Some of you felt guilty resting, as if vigilance was faith. But God says, rest is faith when I am the one in control. Sleep is an act of trust. Stillness is an act of surrender. Peace is not ignorance. It is confidence in God's sovereignty. God is sealing your future decisions. You will not rush. You will not settle. You will not be pressured into alignment that costs you peace. Discernment will slow you down when needed and release you when ready. This sealing also protects your testimony. You will not need to explain everything you survived. Your life will speak quietly but clearly. Sometimes the most powerful testimony is stability after chaos. I want you to remember this truth. When God uses a man to intervene, it is only part of the process. God himself remains your keeper. Do not attach your safety to people. Attach it to God. People are instruments. God is the source. As we close, I want you to receive this final word as a blessing, not a warning. What God has done in this season is complete. You are not waiting for confirmation. You are walking in it. You are not hoping for protection. You are under it. The plans against you have been erased. The authority has shifted. The strength has been restored. And now the work has been sealed. Walk forward without looking back. Carry wisdom, not fear. Carry peace, not pressure. Carry faith, not suspicion. God has gone before you. He stands beside you. And he seals behind you. You are covered. You are kept. You are secure.